Nobody in our village ever saw his real face, not even once. And the day someone tried, the river near our homes turned red. I was there. I saw it with my own eyes. That's how I always begin the story. When people ask me about the boy with the mask, his name was Tomiwa. He came to our village in the middle of Harmattan, when the wind carried dust and secrets. A small brown pickup dropped him at the market square one morning, along with a tall, stern woman we later learned was his aunt. He was just a boy, 11, maybe 12, thin arms, quiet steps. But it wasn't his silence that frightened us. It was the wooden mask he wore, a carved, polished face with empty eyes and a faint smile. He never took it off. Not to eat, not to sleep, not even when the sun was hottest, and the mask must have burned his skin. People whispered, maybe he's hiding scars, or maybe he's cursed. But his aunt never explained. She just said, he's not like other children. Leave him alone. And we did at first. Tomiwa didn't go to school. He didn't play by the stream. He just sat on a broken stool outside their compound, clutching a small bag and staring, always staring. Sometimes I wondered if he was even alive behind the mask. He never made a sound. No humming, no sneezing, not even the coughs most children had during dry season. And yet, strange things began to happen after he arrived. First, the village goats started disappearing. At night, we'd hear them crying, then silence. No blood, no tracks, just vanished. Then, old Papa Aid collapsed in the market after shouting at Tomiwa's aunt for not paying her palm oil debts. People said his body turned cold before it hit the ground. But even that wasn't what truly scared us. It was what happened to my cousin, Iamide. Iamide was wild, reckless. He liked to tease. One evening, as the sun bled red over the trees, he crept behind Tomiwa and yanked off the mask. I didn't see what was underneath. Nobody did. But I heard Iamide scream a scream so sharp it cut the air like a blade. He didn't run. He didn't speak. He just dropped the mask and stood still, eyes wide, like he'd seen the devil himself. His mouth never worked again. Iamide is still alive, by the way, but he hasn't said a word in 6 years. He just draws circles on the floor wherever he sits. We picked up the mask that day and gave it back to Tomiwa. He put it on slowly, quietly, and as he did, the clouds above us turned gray, though it hadn't rained in weeks. That was the day I knew something was wrong with the boy behind the mask. And still, nobody dared to ask why he wore it. Not yet. After what happened to Iamide, the village changed. You could feel it in the way people walked faster past Tomiwa's compound, in the way mothers whispered to their children, "Don't look into his face. Don't talk to him." Even the wind in the trees felt different, as if it knew. But Tomiwa stayed the same, still silent, still sitting on that stool, his mask shining like polished bone in the sun. We began to avoid him, all of us. All but one person. Mama Effie, the widow who lived near the edge of the bush path. She sold roasted maize in front of her house and always had a word for every child. She believed in kindness, not fear. One afternoon, I saw her hand Tomiwa a cob of maize with a smile. He didn't move, just stared at her. She laughed gently and said, "Eat, child. You're still growing." He reached for it. That was the first time I saw his fingers up close, long, dark, with tiny, faint scars across his knuckles, as if something had scratched him from inside. He took the maize, didn't eat, just held it like he didn't understand what it was for. Later that night, Mama Eve's house caught fire. No thunder, no lantern spill, just fire rising from her doorway like it had been waiting. By the time we arrived, her screams had stopped. All we found were ashes, and the maize untouched, resting near her gate. Nobody said anything, but we all looked in one direction. Tomiwa, still on his stool, still staring. The next morning, the village chief called a meeting under the iroko tree. Everyone came. They argued. "He's a bad spirit." Someone shouted, "No, it's the aunt. She brought him here. Let's send them away before more people die." But Chief Iamide silenced us. "We do not act without proof," he said. "Fear is loud, but truth is quiet." Then he turned to me. "You saw the boy first. Do you think he is evil?" My throat dried up. Everyone's eyes burned through me. I looked at Tomiwa seated at the edge of the crowd, unmoving. "I don't know," I whispered, "but something is wrong." That night, I couldn't sleep. My windows rattled though the wind was still. I heard something move outside. Not footsteps, a scrape. Like something dragging something. I got up slowly, heart in my mouth. I peered through the curtain, and I saw him, Tomiwa, standing in the middle of our compound, his back to me, not moving. He was holding his mask in his hand. For the first time, I saw his real head. And I swear to you there was no face. Just smooth skin, flat, pale. No eyes, no mouth, just nothing. And still, I heard breathing, coming from him. But his shoulders never moved. He put the mask back on slowly and turned toward my window. I dropped to the floor, hands over my mouth. When I looked again, he was gone. But the silence behind that mask, it followed me into every dream after that. After that night, I couldn't sleep in the dark again. I told my mother what I saw. She slapped my head and said, "You watch too many Nollywood films. What kind of faceless child?" But I knew what I saw. The worst part? Tomiwa started appearing in new places. Places he'd never been before. One day I saw him standing outside the school compound, staring at the pupils during morning assembly. He didn't move, didn't blink, didn't enter, just stood there behind the gate like a statue with a secret. The next, he was outside the market, unmoving in front of the meat seller's stall, not saying a word. People started locking their children indoors, and then we started hearing the humming. It began as whispers, small children saying they heard soft humming at night, low, slow, like an old lullaby. But it was always followed by something strange, the sound of breathing, deep and hollow. Someone said it's coming from inside his mask. Another said, maybe the mask is alive. But one evening, everything changed. That evening, Ifeanyi, the boy who always boasted he wasn't afraid of anything, made a bet. "I'll enter the house," he said. "The one Tomiwa stays in. And I'll open that room they always keep locked." We begged him not to. "Are you mad?" I asked. "Even his end doesn't go near that door." But Ifeanyi laughed. "I'll go in tonight." He went. He never came back. That night, a scream tore through the village. It was his mother. She was running through the streets barefoot, wailing. We gathered at the front of Tomiwa's house. The aunt was crying too, her wrapper halfway undone, sweat pouring down her face. "The door!" she sobbed. "He opened the door!" We pushed inside. The room was dark. It smelled wrong, rotten but sweet, like overripe fruit and death. The room was empty except for one thing. On the ground in the center of the room was a mask. Not Tomiwa's, a different one. This one was red. And next to it, Ifeanyi's shirt, torn, bloody. No one said anything. We just stood there, frozen. Then a sound came. A hum. Soft, behind us. We turned. Tomiwa stood at the doorway. He tilted his head to the side and hummed. Low, hollow, empty. The aunt screamed and fell to her knees. "I told them not to open the room," she sobbed. That was his brother's mask. The one who disappeared, the one who came back. Different. The silence was louder than any thunder I've ever heard. And in that silence, Tomiwa stepped back, turned, and vanished down the hallway. The mask is still on his face. And we ran. After that night, the village changed. People stopped walking near the boy's house. Mothers would grab their children by the arm and cross the road just to avoid the compound. Some said the boy had brought a curse. Others whispered he wasn't a boy at all, that Tomiwa had died long ago, and something else was wearing his skin. But I couldn't stop thinking about the red mask, the one in the locked room, the one the aunt called his brother's mask. So Tomiwa had a brother. Nobody had ever mentioned him before, not even the aunt, and she loved to talk. So I did something stupid. I asked her. I found her at the village well one morning, her eyes sunken like she hadn't slept in weeks. I didn't even greet her properly. I just blurted out, "Who was the brother?" She dropped her water pot. It hit the ground and shattered. She looked at me like I'd just summoned a spirit. "You want to die young?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Don't ever say that name again." "But he wore a mask too, right?" I pushed. "You said." She grabbed my arm. "Listen, that mask was cursed. His brother put it on one night. He said he wanted to see things differently. That's what he told us. Next morning, he wasn't himself anymore. He wasn't even alive in the right way." I swallowed hard. "What happened?" He disappeared, she said. For 1 year, we searched. Then he came back, with the mask. He never spoke again, just humming and staring. People started dying. Cattle found slaughtered. A baby, God rest her soul, stopped breathing in her crib after he visited. I stepped back. And Tomiwa, she shook her head slowly. After his brother vanished a second time, Tomiwa found the mask in the bush. He was just a baby then. I burned it. I thought it was gone, but her voice broke. I think he made another one. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept hearing the hum in my head, soft, slow, dragging like chains on a dusty floor. But I knew what I had to do. I had to see him again. Not for bravery, for truth. Because something in me needed to know, was Tomiwa still in there? Or was I watching the spirit of a brother who never truly left? It was just after midnight when I crept toward Tomiwa's house. The village was dead silent. Not even the frogs were singing. The door to the compound wasn't locked. That alone should have made me run, but I kept going. Past the empty water pots, past the cracked bench, right up to the wooden door of the main house. It was open, and inside, he was sitting on the floor, cross-legged, wearing the mask. Not the blue one, the red one, the one his brother wore. But it looked wrong now. The red had turned almost black. The edges cracked like dried blood. And Tomiwa, if it was still him, was humming. That same terrible hum. His head tilted side to side, slow, like he was listening to something only he could hear. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. Then he spoke first, without turning, without stopping the hum. Do you want to see what I see? My mouth went dry. He turned to me slow, stiff like his neck had forgotten how to move. Then, he stood, and the mask smiled. Not painted smile. It moved. I didn't want this, he said, voice like gravel. But the silence behind the mask, it fills you. It whispers. It tells you how to be free. He stepped closer. I stepped back. You can't imagine what I've seen, he whispered. Behind the mask, you don't cry. You don't feel pain. You just watch. And you learn that people wear worse masks than mine. Every day. He raised his hand toward me. And that's when I saw it. His fingers weren't fingers anymore. They were wood. Like carved doll hands. Painted, polished. I ran. I didn't look back. Not even when he called my name. The next morning, I told the elders. They laughed at first until they saw the footprints burnt into the earth around the compound. That day, the priest was called. The house was burnt. The trees around it were cut down. No one wanted anything left. And Tomiwa, gone. No one saw him again. But sometimes, when the wind blows through the palm trees in the harmattan season, people say you can hear the hum. And if you ever see a child standing alone, silent, watching you with a mask that shouldn't move, run. Because some masks don't just hide faces. They hide what's trying to come through.